All right. So this is episode I have no idea.
A number pack two.
Yeah, this is an episode number past two, and it's all about dire wolves because recently a a research paper came out, or a research paper is coming out based on something that was done where they've attempted to quote genetically de-extinct dire wolves. Now that sentence sets
Yeah,
Petey off because
it's
it's an
complicated.
incorrect
It's
sentence.
so complicated, man.
So,
A lot happened
so,
here.
so I guess first of all, so welcome back to the episode. But
Right.
so first of
Hmm.
all, what is the hubbub all about? What really
Oh,
happened?
okay. Colossal Bioscience. What they did was they took a gray wolf and they modified 20 like genes across I think 14 alleles or something. I forget the exact wording. Yeah, 20 edits in 14 genes in a
Okay,
gray wolf. Okay. Which made it like physically different enough so that they classify it as phenotypically or looking like a direwolf.
okay,
So essentially what they did was we have some DNA from direwolves,
right,
okay? And the gray wolf is a 99.5% match. Now that's not nearly as good as it sounds, which I'll explain later. But
okay,
so they then took what they know about the direwolf and modified the gray wolf so that it would look like the direwolf.
okay, okay,
So they didn't just bring back a direwolf. We can't do that yet. Like that's just not a thing. What they did was they took a gray wolf and made it into what looks like a direwolf.
okay. So and that comes down to the 99.5 thing. Like we share 99.8 or something or
Yeah,
99.9% DNA
with
with
chimpanzees.
chimpanzees.
Uh-huh.
But that zero point 0.1 or 0.2%
There's a lot.
is significant.
Hmm.
So
That's like
so it's
thousands and thousands of alleles,
okay. So they're saying
which
they've
is
given
like
it the
the
look.
single spots in the gene. Like they're in the like it's a stage
Okay,
down. So like a
and so they've given
gene's
it the look of. And when you say they've given it the look of what the size, the fur,
it's
the
bigger.
okay,
It's like it's bigger, grows faster. The fur's white, which we'll talk about later.
okay,
They appear to have a mane, which interestingly enough, that part they didn't code for, it just happened.
okay,
So they're assuming that that might mean that direwolves had manes. I mean, it's
that
not like a
man.
lion mane, but more fur here.
Well, and I can tell you that at certain times of year, like Huey, our biggest
Yeah,
husky,
a
you can
husky.
see he's a little thicker in that area.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know if I'd
it's like
call it a
a
mane, but it actually he gets
Mhm.
thicker in that area than everywhere else.
Yeah.
I mean that so I don't know if that could just be recessive in today's
Hmm.
wolves and maybe the dire wolf DNA. That's just me speculating. I have no clue how any of this
Yeah.
works. I'm just saying that I think that I see that in other animals in other canines
Hmm.
occasionally that look more wolfy.
Yeah.
So they don't so so that's kind of your point that they haven't brought back the dire wolf. They've brought back
Yeah.
some of the characteristics
Heuristics. Yeah.
okay of the dire
Because
wolf.
so on one hand, yes, it's essentially what a direwolf probably would have been to some
Okay.
extent. So like
Okay.
functionally it might be a direwolf, but it's actually like basically exactly what they did in Jurassic Park. Because Jurassic Park is they took the DNA of dinosaurs and I
Okay.
think in the first movie they added to toad or frog DNA.
Chickens or something, I thought.
No,
Chickens or
frogs. It's
frogs. Oh,
frogs.
toe, because
And then in
amphibian or
future movies, it's like they combine it with more things.
okay.
So, but like
Okay.
they're taking the DNA and modifying something to look like it, but technically it's not it.
Okay. So they didn't just take dire wolf DNA and somehow generate it into a dire wolf. They had to
No,
take bits and pieces of the coding, put it in something else. So that something else is still
a
90,
gray wolf,
a gray
essentially.
wolf, 99% gray
Yeah.
wolf or
Because for
whatever.
example, there's some arguments being made like for example, if you were to take 14 genes from us and put it in a chimpanzee does not make it a human.
Right. Right.
Or there's another thing. So a lot of genetic modification happens in plants. We know this because GMOs, all
Right.
that. One of the genes they put in some tomatoes is from flounders, the
Okay.
fish.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you add those genes to tomato, does it become a fish?
Become a flounder. Yeah.
Which is a whole other problem because fish is a
Right.
horrible term, but I should probably explain that
Yes.
because I brought
Yes.
it up. So actually, technically, how I want to say like phylogenetics, taxonomy, that whole thing works is that if at one point, like at the point where it splits off into fish, everything past that would be considered a fish.
Okay.
However, how evolution works, fish evolved and then splits from that were amphibians, reptiles, mammals, birds, dinosaurs, that whole thing split off. Now to be clear, the fish we have today aren't the ancestors of us. They
Right.
are
Right.
evolved on their own path. But the point is,
Right.
those fish and all of us can trace our common ancestry back to a fish of something classified as a fish, meaning technically all vertebrates are fish,
Okay.
including us.
So to call everything in the ocean a fish. Well, I mean, other than whales and dolphins, I get it, but all the other stuff
But
fish.
technically, according to this definition, like the scientific definition, they would be
They
fish.
would be fish. So that
And
would kind
so
of be like
would you.
going. That would be like going to the zoo and saying you saw animals. That everything there was an animal. Well,
Yeah,
yes, but that means nothing. It's
yeah.
it's
So
it's
the
a
point is
useless
that
classification
fish is kind of falling
scientifically.
out of favor in science as a term.
Okay, because it's so broad, it's meaningless,
Yeah.
effectively.
Now,
And
interestingly enough,
can you
along that
can I
point, what?
can I interrupt for a second? See the little screen on top of your camera?
Yeah.
Now you're looking at me.
But no, but you're
Or no,
there.
you're looking at you when you do that. Oh, because your laptop's not under your camera. Oh, I got
Yeah.
you. Okay. Okay. Well,
I
just so
mean,
you
I could,
know, when you're
because yeah, when I put it this way, you get upset. So you have to deal with it.
that's fine.
This
So anyway,
feels
go
more
ahead.
like a podcast angle, is like off to
That's
the
fine.
side a bit.
That's
They
fine.
tend to do that. I don't know why.
Okay. So
Sorry.
sorry, cameraman dad kicking in. Sorry. Um, so you were saying fish useless
Yeah.
scientifically
So I have a
thing.
little bit more on this tangent. We can get back to direwolves, but I feel like this
Okay.
is kind of helping understand how complex all
Yeah.
this is.
Yes.
So another thing that's interesting is that by the same definition of fish, mean all vertebrates are fish. When you go
Mhm.
down to specifically reptiles, that includes dinosaurs and birds. So
Okay.
technically, birds are reptiles. Now,
Right.
what's interesting is that scientists are kind of accepting that and saying that birds are reptiles, just flat out.
Okay.
While with
Okay.
fish, it's so far up that's like it's not worth it.
Okay.
Like this far down, it's like, okay, we can just say that. So I tried to talk while looking at myself. That does not work. Okay, we have to deal with this. I was just that so birds are reptiles, essentially. Now, that's not
Okay.
to say that birds aren't, their own thing, but
Right.
again,
Right. But
yeah,
they're from the family of
yeah.
or related to the family of. Okay. So so to bring that back
So
to
the
the dire
point is that
oh, go
our
ahead.
definitions of things are weird.
Well, because there's the scientific realities of things, and then there's how we've come to colloquially refer
Yeah,
to things. And we, the general public, us out here, not science guy you, but us out here,
yeah,
we then try and apply those colloquial terms to the science. And that is where the
mhm,
misinterpretations come of, oh, they brought back the dire wolf because it's more complex than that. But to us,
yeah,
it's oh, it's look, it's a little dire wolf.
yeah. But then here's another problem. So, what is a species? What would you say is the definition of a species?
A species. I guess that I would have to say from scientific, I would assume it's where you come to that point where you can say 100% of DNA has enough genetic similarities. Like you take the chimp and the people, that little difference makes them not
Mhm.
the same species. That when you hit,
So
and I don't know if it's 99.9999 or what,
yeah,
but did you have to come
specifically what
to
it
a
is
theoretical
that
100?
a species is a population that can
Hmm.
breed with itself and make viable offspring, but can't breed
Okay.
with anything else and make viable offspring.
Okay. So that's the reproductive component of, if you can't crossbreed, you're not the same because if you attempt,
Yeah,
if you
but
attempt and
specifically, those
it's
offspring can also have kids because, like, you can breed a lion and a tiger, make a
but then it
liger,
can't have a kid.
but the
Well, and
liger can't have kids.
that's like a donkey
Mule,
and a
a
mule
donkey
make an
and a horse can make a
ass.
mule.
Donkey and a mule to take a mule, but then the mule can't reproduce
Yes, a mule
itself.
can't reproduce.
Okay. Okay. So that's the limiting, well, that's what they use as the defining barrier.
However, that's the most popular one. There's actually
Okay.
like 20 different identities of species that you can use.
Okay.
So the thing is, Colossal Bioscience is saying phenotypically or physical traits, this is a
Right.
direwolf because it looks like a direwolf, it acts like a direwolf. Was it like if it
Right.
looks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck?
Right. Yeah.
But the thing is that scientists don't really like that
Yeah. A lot of
because
things look
especially because we
alike.
have the genes, because obviously this is
Yeah.
all genetically modified. So they
Right.
say it's not enough because the only reason we use that, especially in fossils, is because well, there's no DNA because everything's dead and like
Okay.
dead. Like dire wolf,
Right.
they're dead, but we can get some DNA from the remains. But
Right.
like
Right.
with a T-Rex, there's no DNA.
There's no DNA existing. Okay.
So yeah, so
Okay.
that's the thing. That's one of the main problems is that classical bioscience is using a definition that not
Right.
science in general likes. So it's like, according to this definition, it's a dire wolf, but that's not the widely accepted definition. But again,
Well,
it's not the widely accepted definition.
and once it grows up, now I guess this is going to come to the conversation of nurture versus nature.
Yeah.
It's going to have been raised by wolves, current day wolves.
Well, actually, right now they're kind of being kept on their own. They're not being raised. I think they're being raised by, well, raised by people, like
Okay, well,
people.
but even
Like,
that is going to have an influence that
yeah,
there are certain, like hunting, that, you know, young lionesses learn from their moms, and
yeah.
defense and marking
Okay.
techniques. I mean, some of
So,
that becomes, we
okay,
see it
wait,
as
wait.
inherent, but go ahead.
Literally this week in my evolution class, we're talking about behavior.
Okay.
I'm not, so there's innate behaviors and then
Right.
like learned behaviors. Or
Right.
usually it's a mix of both. I will say, like,
Yeah.
all behavior usually has a mix. So, like,
Right.
innately, animals have some instincts that pass down genetically. For
Right.
example, the elephants at San and during the San, like, what was that, Los Angeles?
Oh, the yeah, in California, the earthquake
In
just
California,
last
there's an
week or
earthquake
whatever. Yeah.
recently, and an elephant herd at a zoo instinctually formed a protection circle around their young, which is a
Yeah,
thing
I
they do
saw
in the
that. That
wild.
was really cool that
Yeah, but the
they,
thing is,
yeah,
they didn't learn that from
right.
anybody. That's
They'd never
genetic.
seen it before. Yeah.
On the other hand, here's interesting an example I learned. So birds, they test this as white-crowned sparrows. If you
Okay.
raise them without their parents and teach them a different song, they'll learn that song.
Okay.
So they won't be able to communicate with their species. However, if
Okay.
you give a baby bird both its parents' songs and a different song, it will
Right.
learn the parents' song because like it innately knows that's the right one.
That's the right one.
So
Okay.
that's like a mixed
Okay.
example. So like these
Okay. Oh,
dire
that's a good
wolves, like
example. Yeah.
they could innately know something from their dire wolf genes,
Right.
but at the same time, if they aren't taught it, it won't activate.
Okay. Okay. So it's
And
kind of
again,
like that innate thing is sitting dormant, and the
yeah,
parents teaching it would activate that
yeah. And since there's no one to
innate.
activate it, they would never do it.
Okay. So
But
that
there
so it
may be
would
some
be
things they innately do, like again with the elephants, like they innately
right.
know that. So
But that's more, I'm guessing that's more of a, something is happening I don't understand. This is how I protect my young. Regardless of
instinct,
what the thing
basically.
is,
Yeah,
this is how they protect their young. Yeah.
yeah. It's the instinctual response, essentially.
Okay. Okay. All right. Interesting. So really we could never really know. how a dire wolf would react, or specifically how it might hunt, or we could never see it
Yeah.
because we
Yes.
can't be sure if it's that innate behavior coming out or something that it's mixed innate with
Hmm.
what it's seen, or if we've just taught it a completely new bird song.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. So
So
realistically, what we can say with reasonable confidence is they brought back some of the physical characteristics so that we can see to some extent really what a dire wolf looked like.
yes.
Probably on a smaller scale. I mean, they're bigger than a wolf, smaller
Yeah.
than a real
No,
dire
they
wolf.
should probably be about the same size. I think the size should be fine.
Should be there. And what
Because
was the
size
typical
isn't that
size?
complicated. I don't think size is as complicated genetically as something like
Okay.
innate behavior or something.
Okay. And what
Also,
what was the typical size of a dire wolf?
so in real life, dire wolves were they could get up to like 150 pounds, and it's believed that these offspring could grow up to be about 150 pounds. So
And do
yes.
you know about shoulder height?
Uh, let's see. Give me a second. It's going through
Because I was
Wikipedia.
under the impression they were like as tall as a bear, shoulder height, not standing up on his hind
Shoulder
legs.
height 38 inches.
Okay, so only 3 feet. I was thinking they were more like four or so. You can do share screen if you want. You're in
No, you
Zoom.
see that?
You can, I see. Yeah. Yeah. See, I was, and maybe I just had that in my head from the whatever show.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing. So now I think it's a good time to talk about a lot of the controversy that's happening about this. So one, there's the whole claim that like this app actually isn't a dire wolf. And two,
Right.
oh, these look remarkably similar to the wolves from Game of Thrones.
Right.
The dire wolves of Game of Thrones. They have the
Right.
white fur, and which is not proven yet. I'll get to that more
Right.
in a second. And also,
Right.
there's the pictures with the writer of the Game of Thrones, and
Yeah.
apparently he's also a like backer of Colossal Bioscience. Like he's an investor. So some
Yeah.
people think there
Right.
might be some what is that called, like crossed interest or not?
Yeah. Where basically the scientists had even if a subconscious interest in
Yeah.
kind of making these look like what he would want them to
Yes.
look like because he's an investor, whether it be
Yeah.
conscious
What's
or
that called?
subconscious.
What's that
Yeah.
called? There's a word for
Bias.
that.
But
No, there's another
uh,
word. Like
uh,
it's used like when you can't have like jurors on like a certain,
conflict of interest
yes,
or
that
conflict of
conflict of
interest.
interest.
Okay. Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to say.
Okay.
I could not remember that for the life of me.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, that they
Yeah.
would kind of have a vested interest, and even if they're trying to resist doing that, could they
Hmm.
really keep it from
However, here's an
how they
important thing. One of the big things is the white fur.
okay.
Because currently scientists saying maybe like red fur, kind of like maybe like this, but a little more red, maybe.
Okay.
So
Okay.
maybe something like this. I mean, this
More
is
like
supposed to be
Maleficent, a red
it's
husky.
supposed to be a raven. Yeah, our
Yeah.
raven, but yeah, but no. So, but the thing is, there's a paper coming out from Colossal that explains everything they did more scientifically. Like I will say,
Okay.
Colossal's
Okay.
been very open about what they've done. Like
Right.
they're saying it's a dire wolf, but they're saying why they think that. They're not just
Right.
saying, "Oh, it's a dire wolf, shut up." Like they're giving their
Right.
reasons.
Right.
And then
But when the
also,
paper comes out, the devil's always in the details.
yes.
Okay.
So, and they're saying we have a reason why we made them white, more than just,
Right.
oh, Game of Thrones. So
Right.
the thing is, the paper's not out. So the
Right.
question becomes, why is all this coming out before the paper's out? Because it's
Right.
not like they did the second wolves were born. The wolves are 6 months old.
Right. Right.
This, I've only heard of this from one Reddit thread. So, this isn't like the scientific source to end all scientific sources. But there's a chance that the main article that went forth, the Time magazine article,
Right.
broke the embargo before it was supposed to. Meaning
Ah,
that
okay.
what probably happened was, yes, they got all this footage obviously over time, and they had the media ready on Colossal Biosciences side,
Right.
and they were going to
Right.
wait till the paper is ready. But then Time magazine pushed early. So Colossal kind
Okay.
of had to react, and it's like, okay,
Yes.
we need to get on top of this media right now.
Okay. Okay.
So
So from that perspective, the situation allegedly, supposedly, is that
Yeah.
the scientific group doing this didn't jump
Hmm.
the gun. Time
Yeah.
Magazine jumped the gun, and the
Yes.
scientific community working on this felt like, okay, we have to address this now.
Yeah.
We
I
can't
just
just
think
leave this hanging.
this company, because
Yeah,
it is a science company, but it is a company.
right. But
Here.
yes,
This
yeah. But
isn't
I'm
like
saying
a
the
government
scientists working at that
institution or
company
something.
aren't trying to
Yeah.
rush. They wanted to get it right and take their time with the
Yeah.
paper. It was time that jumped the gun, supposedly.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
which would make more sense.
Yeah. So that's causing some confusion.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, just do a little bit general about dire wolves, and then we can kind of get back to the
Yeah. Do a
science.
little bit.
Maybe some
Then I want to talk
questions
about the
before we do answers.
why bring back
Yeah.
species, the complicated and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah. So the general dire wolf stuff, like when, where,
Yes.
habits, food, that kind
So
of thing.
dire wolf was in prehistoric North America
Okay.
during the Pleistocene, late Pleistocene, early Holocene. So this is 125,000 to 10,000 years ago.
Oh, so I mean,
Basically
in
Ice
historical
Age,
context,
essentially Ice Age.
pretty recent. Not
Yeah,
like T-Rex age or anything. This
no,
is okay. So this is with man,
yeah, like early man,
early man.
in
Yeah,
around
early.
when
Okay.
they started to go extinct. Whether that's
Okay.
linked or partially linked is still a debate to this day. But yeah,
Okay. Okay.
we talked about height and weight. Now, here's the interesting thing. For many years, it was believed that these were closely related to, to gray wolves.
Hmm.
However, recently there's a paper that came out that actually pushes them into their own group a
Okay.
little bit farther away and more closely related to jackals. So I'll
And maybe
um
what you can do is maybe after we
can I
finish,
screen
send
share?
me the references for this, and I can put the information up on the screen.
Can I screen share? Isn't
Oh
that
yeah,
where you
yeah.
do
Do
that?
share.
Oh yeah.
Hang on a sec.
You disabled it. Great job,
Here. I'll
man.
fix it. I'll fix it.
Great job.
Share.
We tried one nice thing and you messed it up.
There. Go ahead. Now share. Yeah.
Okay. Wait, is it sharing? Yeah.
It's working on it. Here it comes. It's thinking. It's think. There it is. Okay.
All right.
All right.
So you see my mouse too? It's a
Yes.
little
Yeah.
laggy, but yeah, okay. So this is K9. This is like this is the tact this is a subfamily. Like so this is like a group that's like has all
Right.
canines in it.
Right.
Gray wolves, so there's a split here. Six
Okay.
million years ago. This
Okay.
split leads to dire wolf.
Okay.
And you can see the more orangey representation of them.
Yeah. And the larger
And
and
then there's a split for jackals
okay.
separately, like on this lineage. Okay.
Right.
Then there's a
Right.
split for wild painted dogs, wild dogs. Then there's a split for dogs. And then you get a split for wolves, dogs, Eurasian jackals, things like that.
Kind of the more modern canines.
Really, these right here are modern too. Like they're all here. We have them.
But I
These are
mean, yeah, the group that relates to like our dogs in the house.
yes.
Is
This is the group that has gray wolves and our dogs.
okay.
Okay. So you can see that dire wolves are actually pretty split.
Right.
However, another thing, allegedly the paper has evidence that 3 million years ago, so halfway,
Right.
this lineage interbred with something over here, or like a
Oh,
relative
okay.
did, like an
Okay.
ancestor of these did. So
Okay.
there might be more in here than meets the eye. So yeah, that's another thing. A lot of people think that all evolutionary trees are very static like this. However,
Yeah.
there's a term for this, and I have
It is
looked
it's
this
much more
down,
complex.
that
Yeah.
like things can meet up, like they can go
Yeah.
back on themselves.
Yeah.
What was that?
Nature isn't as neat as one of these neat and
Yeah.
organized as one of these little
Okay,
charts.
where's speciation? I need to get to the speciation chapter. Oh, yes, chapter therapy. Yes. Okay. Um, there's a word for this.
Speciation is the evolutionary process where one ancestral species gives rise to two or more distinct species. meaning they
Yeah,
can no longer interbreed to produce fertile. Occurs when a group within a separate when a occurs when a group within a species separates from other members of its species and develops its own unique characteristics. This is like
yeah.
from National
Well, I
Geographic or
think
something.
there's specifically a term where like species can kind of go back into each other. Um, yeah, gene exchange. I think part of it were like horizontal gene transfer is like so
Okay.
bacteria can actually give genes to each other, like two living
Okay.
individuals. So like in this model here, you can okay, it's not gonna work, but like so there's this split here, and you
Okay.
probably
Yeah.
can't see it, but like there's
I
arrows
can.
going
Yeah.
between, which is like the genes mixing. So that
Here,
might
and
be
that's
what
I've got
happened here.
something HGT, horizontal gene transfer, the
Yeah,
movement of genetic information across normal mating barriers
yeah.
between more or less distantly related organisms. The process
Mhm.
where genetic material is exchanged between organisms that are not in a parent offspring relationship. And they don't mean
Yes.
mom and dad, they mean
Yeah.
parent species to
Yeah, so they're
lineage.
saying that there might be this paper again might show some horizontal gene transfer, which might mean that
Okay,
using the gray wolf as a base makes a little more sense
or sense.
than the
Oh, then if they had
taxonomy would
used, for
lead you to
instance, an
believe.
African wild dog or a jackal or something.
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
that's why, so that's kind of their reasoning for why they used a gray
Yeah.
wolf
Again,
out of this
again,
chart.
the
Okay.
paper's not out yet, so we have to wait and see the
Some of
specifics.
this is speculation. I mean, they've
Yeah.
touched on it, but we don't have the
It's like
details.
what they said, but not like what they've
Right.
officially published. So it's
Right.
almost like hearsay, you could say.
But yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right. So then we're guessing then that if there was would it be safe to say if there was interbreeding that
Mhm.
then the dire wolves and the gray wolves at some point lived in similar areas, had similar habits, had similar stuff because they kind of came together and
Well,
something had
here's
to.
an important thing. They
Okay.
lived together. Like gray wolves and dire
Oh,
wolves
okay.
lived together because gray
Okay.
wolves are relatively old too. Like,
Okay.
I mean, like they lived back then. The thing is that when all the megafauna went extinct, like the bison, the mammoths, all that, like the big bison, sorry, we have a
Right.
bison species now. There was bigger bison back then. The
Right.
camel species, the mammoths, the ground
Right.
sloths, all that. They went extinct. The dire wolf went extinct because that's what they ate. But the
Okay.
gray wolves were still eating small things, so they survived. Or at least
Okay.
they're a very similar ancestor. I'm not sure if it's exactly a
Yeah.
gray wolf, but it was
Yeah.
like something that became what we have gray wolves now. So
But they were similar enough in their lifestyles that they were compatible socially and therefore were attempted to breed and
yeah,
apparently
there's or at
successfully
least
did
that
so.
some maybe 3 million years ago. So like
Right.
before these two were the species they are now,
Right.
back like their ancestors might have been similar enough.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's it. Like, we can't ever say, like, this species evolved directly into this
Right.
species. But,
Right.
like, we can say that, like, the ancestor of this species evolved into that. So, whatever ancestor back then would
Right.
have evolved. Yeah. So,
Okay.
okay, I can probably stop sharing now.
Okay.
But
Um, so and they so other than that, we do we know anything from the archaeological bit of their family groups and life and
we
that kind of
do
thing?
believe that dire wolves probably lived in packs because after the
Okay.
La Brea tar pits, they find a lot of them.
That's is that the only place that we find them? I thought
No,
I saw
no, we found
somewhere
fossils in other places. They were
in
all
other
across
places.
North
Okay.
America. La Brea
Okay.
is the famous one, obviously,
Okay.
because
Okay.
that's the death trap all the animals got stuck in. But like they're found in large clusters in the tar pits,
Okay.
so they probably lived in packs.
In
Yes,
family groups. Okay.
yeah.
So then so then it's
Let
the
me make sure I'm
initial
not
assumption
speaking.
would probably be, oh, they probably lived similar to the way that, wolves do or lions or any other kind of
Yeah.
packing animal.
Hmm.
Um, but we don't really know if
Yeah,
they
so
more.
there's been fossils found um a lot out west, down to
Okay.
Texas, South Dakota, Pennsylvania, Florida,
Oh, so
West
everywhere.
Virginia, like the Virginias. So like
Yeah.
they're pretty widespread.
But then we also, so from wolves to lions, since those are the two I used,
Hmm.
wolves tend to hunt as a full pack, but if the mothers need to stay behind to watch cubs in certain circumstances, they will.
Usually
Where
someone's left to
lions,
watch the babies.
someone's left, but the whole pack hunts. Where a
Yeah.
pride, generally the females do the hunting.
Yes.
So even
And
though you would say they'd live similar lifestyle, I mean, in general, similar lifestyle,
yeah.
very different
Hmm.
habits and
Yeah.
interactions. So that's the part we don't know about the dire wolf yet. How did that
Yeah.
part function?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it would probably be more similar to the gray wolf, but we don't know.
Right, right. And that's what that's probably be the hypothesis or whatever,
Yeah.
until proven differently or yeah.
Hmm. So now
All
comes
right.
to the point of why de-extinction. Why did you?
Yeah.
So first of all, this isn't de-extinction. It's like
Okay.
a close like version, but it's not. So that's the people getting worried about that this is going to set a precedent that extinction doesn't matter. Extinction
Yeah.
still matters. Species going extinct
Yeah.
still means they go extinct. That's
This is
never
like
going to
Legos and
matter.
bricks blocks.
Yeah,
You can build things with both of them, but they're different. You
yeah,
can't hook one to the other. You can't. They're not the
hmm
same thing. They,
yeah. So conservation is still very important.
yes.
Which,
Yeah.
of course, some people saying that like they should stop this. Then I think that's a little overboard. I think we just need to educate people that this isn't de-extinction
Yeah.
and
Once something's
extinction
gone,
still
it's gone, and we
is
need to be
gone.
aware
Yeah.
of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. However, they are trying to bring back more like in their version, the phenotypic version, the direwolf, which they've done, the
Right.
dodo, the Tasmanian tiger, thylacine, and the woolly mammoth. Now,
Okay.
the first three are kind of just like, right, so actually it is interesting. The first one, the direwolf, is extinct before we really came along. At least
Right.
like human society, you could say, came along.
Right.
Direwolf, I mean, sorry, thylacine, Tasmanian tiger, like that's the same thing. And the dodo,
Right.
so those two, we specifically made extinct.
Yeah, because weren't dodos like real tasty or something?
Yeah. Also, kind of
Literally.
like,
I mean,
and they didn't know any better because they lived on an island. They had no instinct to run away
yeah. So they were very friendly and very tasty.
on one island. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and the Tasmanian tiger again was on Tasmania and Australia, mainly
Okay.
Tasmania. So,
So they had no innate fear of humans per se.
yeah. Also, like they're just so limited because of where they lived. So
Right.
we
The
made them
population was
extinct.
small to begin
So
with.
there's
Right.
more of an argument to bring them back because they could be reintroduced to the environment and they shouldn't
Right.
be extinct. In
Right.
general, human consensus is that if we make something extinct, it's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like if an animal naturally goes extinct, like the dire wolves, then it just is what it is. That's another thing.
Right.
We could reintroduce the thylacine and the dodo.
Right.
We can't really introduce the dire wolves because they don't have their food. They don't
Right.
have like their habitat. The habitat's even slightly different. Now, apparently
Right.
some Native American reservations want to have dire wolves introduced onto their land,
Hmm.
which but the problem is that we don't they don't really have a spot. Now, if we brought back like their prey as well, then maybe, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that's still kind of weird. Like
Yeah.
it's kind so but then the mammoth one is interesting because
Okay.
what they want to reintroduce the mammoths to the mammoth steppe, which is this big area in Siberia, like this big almost tundra.
Hmm.
However, because they would maintain it, because since they've gone extinct, this has been the permafrost up in the mountain stuff has been melting because the
Okay.
permafrost, like the whole area, isn't properly maintained, and
Okay.
that's speeding up climate change because it's melting, releasing a lot of
Right.
carbon, causing more
Right.
climate change. So the thought process, if we bring back, well, there's a mammoth, or what bioscience is doing, a Asian elephant modified to be a mammoth,
Right.
they could maintain the mammoth steppe, as it's called, up in Siberia, and maybe slow down climate change.
Okay.
But then again, this is a lot of speculation. Obviously, we haven't done it yet.
Right.
So, but that's
I
like,
do.
an
We need to
idea.
do at some point. We need to do an episode on Ice Age creatures because I've always had a question, and I'm just going to put it out there because it can be a
Yeah.
future episode. So we are constantly going up and shoving icebreaker ships through sheets of ice and breaking
Yeah.
things up and whatnot. If you cut an ice cube in half, it melts faster because it has more surface area.
Hmm.
It just that's always bothered me. We go up there and create more surface area. But anyway,
Okay.
that's a topic
Okay.
for another.
Now
That's
let
a
me,
topic
it's
for
going to be real quick. Let me answer
okay,
this. We
okay,
can do it another, but let me answer this.
okay,
Those ships are cutting through ice sheets that form and melt every summer.
okay. So they're not going
They're
through
not
permafrost
going through the
sheets.
big glaciers and icebergs.
Okay, that always bothered me. I
That's
was like, why
different.
are we cutting the ice in half? It makes it
No.
melt faster in your soda
So
pop.
yes, those ice sheets are like in summer, and especially in the Arctic, they're like fully melting, which they're not supposed to. There's supposed to be some amount still there,
Right,
and they're not
right.
getting as big in winter because of climate change. But
Okay,
that's not
okay.
the icebreakers are just cutting through seasonal ice, which yes is
Oh,
less
okay,
than it used to be, but that's just because of climate change. That's not because of the
oh, okay,
icebreakers.
okay.
There
Well, that
might
makes me feel
be
a
some
little better because I always
ecological impact, but I don't think it's nearly. I
not
don't think
significant, not
it,
statistically significant,
yeah.
as they
Hmm.
say. Okay, okay,
Sorry, I just you had that question. That was a really quick answer, so I just wanted to
okay,
answer.
cool.
Also, I will say that's my best educated thought process there.
Yeah,
Like,
interpretation of the yeah,
yeah,
what you know. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So you wanted to dive more into the nuts and bolts of why this is not bringing back the.
No, we just did that. Like we were talking about
Oh, I
because
thought there
it's
was
just
another aspect you
no.
wanted to.
What I want to finish up on is the whole kind of controversy of them bringing back the animals. Like we started
Okay.
with, we started with that.
Okay.
So there might be a reason to bring back the dodo and thylacine because we made them extinct. Bring back the
Right.
mammoth might help the modern ecosystem. But the dire wolf is kind of like what you can't really do anything with it. It would just kind of be
Right.
like a zoo animal.
Yeah.
So there's some
Yeah.
debate about that.
Well, and that I guess would also come to the ethics of okay, you brought this animal back for us to gawk at, but it's alone. I mean,
Yeah.
well, I mean, you bring back a pack of them or whatever, but they're
Yeah.
alone.
Currently there's three. There's two 6 months old and I think a 3 month old or
Yeah.
1 month old. Like Romulus and Remus, named after the Roman
Right.
founders, are the
Right.
two older males. And then there's a young female. I forgot the name, but yeah.
And now, will they be able to breed?
I don't know. I do
Okay.
not know that. I'm
Because even if
assuming
they
they could
could, we run into the
probably.
issue of their brothers and sisters.
Yes, because like it's
Okay.
cloning. So
Right.
yes, I do believe that probably the males could breed with the female. I don't
Right.
know that. I do not
Right.
know
Right.
that.
Right.
I
Right.
don't
Right.
know.
Right. Right. Right.
So
But then ethically, should they would
yeah.
become the question. Okay.
Hmm. But another thing is like, yes, this is an argument that I don't know the answer to and needs to be
Right.
debated. Because like
Yeah.
also these are being kept safe on like a big preserve. Like they're not in like a little
Right.
cage. So like quality of life, things like that.
Right.
But then
Yeah. They brought
also,
them back for scientific study, or they created them, not brought them back, created
yeah,
them for
they
scientific
created
study.
them.
But they're treating them with some dignity. They're not just, hey,
Yeah.
we created these. We can send three to your zoo. You know.
Yeah, and they're not out of zoo. They're in
Right.
actually their location's not known. It's somewhere out
Okay.
west
Right.
because they're worried about poachers.
Yeah.
Because for some
Yeah.
reason people are like, they brought back an animal. We should put
Yeah.
it on my wall. Whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, like there's another ethical debate that I actually feel like is not that big of a deal. It's the
Okay.
whole so bringing back these animals cost $10 billion.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are saying, shouldn't this money and technology be used for conserving current animals? I have two things to say about this. Number
Mhm.
one, the Colossal Bioscience itself is also working on conservation.
Okay.
They actually say that when they are helping with bison, because bison, they're having a bottleneck situation where we killed so many of them that there's a very small population left. So they're helping clone and help keep the bison good. And
Mhm.
some people there were talking about direwolves in the Bison Project, and that's why they decided to do the direwolves, actually.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then they're also working on with red wolves, and it's a little complicated. So there are 20 red wolves in the wild.
That's it.
20. Yes. They are a critically endangered species. There's 20 in a forest in North Carolina. That's it.
Okay. Okay.
However, what they're doing is that they're cloning a another group of wolves that lives, I think, on Ghost Island or something, that is half red wolf, half coyote.
Okay.
And they're cloning them to keep that population up, which is a little debatable because that population is not doing that bad. But the point is, they're working on genetics with red wolves and endangered species like
Right.
that. And
Right.
also, they're currently working with quolls, which is important. They're marsupials that they believe they could use to bring back the thylacine as the base, first of all. Second
Okay.
of all, they're modifying quolls in Australia to be more resistant to cane toad venom. Because reintroduced
Okay.
cane toads as an invasive species, they're populating like crazy, and they're toxic, so they're killing animals that eat them. However, they're planning to modify the native animals like the quoll to be resistant to that,
Okay.
so that they could eat the cane toads and be fine to kind of
Right.
reduce the effect the cane toads are having. So
Right.
they are doing conservation as
Okay.
well. Like people acting like, oh, they're only doing this. No, they're doing other things. There might even be some stuff where they're trying to like, I don't know if it's them or another group's trying to bring back, at least in the US, a tree that's like locally extinct, the American chestnut. It might be
Okay.
extinct or it might be locally extinct. And they wanted to because there's a disease in America that was introduced that literally kills any tree that's planted here. They're hoping to
Hmm.
modify the American chestnut to be immune to that disease so they can replant it here.
And could they also be looking for, so you're talking about the red, excuse me, the red wolf and all that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And so as they're working with the dire wolf, they're kind of going back further. And could they be looking for traits and genes that might be helpful in saving this population?
Maybe that could happen. I don't think
You
that's
know,
their
because
goal, but
this
it
is a
could
whole
happen.
different, unique. It's so
Yeah,
long ago that maybe they could find things here that could be
yeah,
brought and used here to
yeah.
help.
They're not aiming for that, as far as I
Right.
know, but it could happen.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
All right.
And then another thing about this debate, the whole, oh, we should use this money somewhere else. I'm sorry. Everything costs money. I'm so
Yeah.
tired of we shouldn't do X because it's too expensive,
Yeah.
and maybe it should be used somewhere else. It's a company that's doing what it wants to do. It's also doing conservation. This science can still help a lot. Like there's even
Yeah.
possibilities of like artificial wounds or modifying human stuff. My mom literally today sent me an article about how another company modified a pig liver
Hmm.
to it's still in testing to possibly like hook up to a human that has a sick
Right.
liver and allow that liver
Right.
to heal while the pig liver does that. So like
Right.
this genetic editing has a future.
Right. Yeah,
So
it's not, they're not doing this just for pure roadside circus or some other
yeah,
evil intent.
hmm,
They are, it's sometimes you have to do research for the sake of research to
yeah,
discover things, and they seem to be doing it in a moral and ethical manner.
yeah,
Um, and yes, this is where they chose to invest their resources.
hmm,
Um, yeah, there's always going to be, well, I think you should put the money here. I think you should put the money there. Well, it's got to go somewhere. At some point, somebody has to decide, okay, this is where I'm going to put it. This is,
yeah,
and then
hmm,
that's, it's not to take away from all the other areas that we need money. It's that, okay, this
hmm,
is, they feel that doing this is going to give them some information or insights that may be beneficial beyond.
yeah. Or you could expand this argument out to personal taste, even. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think conservation, I would rather do a work on conservation than poverty. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of people would be like, so like I would like I might take some money that might go to poverty and put it to conservation. Well, a lot
Right.
of people would disagree with that, which I'm not
Right.
saying that's right or wrong. I'm just
Right.
saying
Just
like
that. Yeah. It's a, yeah.
this the
Presenting a,
money could go to
yeah.
millions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, it's, well, and that's a debate across societal and political.
mhm,
There are plenty of problems in the world, and everybody has to decide what they're passionate. Maybe that's the point. Everybody has to decide what they're passionate about. You
yeah,
can say this person should have put their money in this other thing, but if they're not passionate about it, that money would not have been as beneficial in that area because they wouldn't have
yeah.
been as invested in it. And I mean
Yeah.
invested.
Like if I
It's,
want to save animals,
yeah.
why am I not going doing conservation work out in Africa? Well,
Right.
I want to stay at home, learn about a lot of animals, and take care of them here as backup breeding
Yeah.
populations for the wild,
Native
and
species
educate
and
people
right.
about that when I work at zoos. That's what I
Right.
want to do. and
Right.
this is my path for conservation, even
Right.
though other people's paths might be going and working in Africa or something like that.
Well, and
So
that's a pretty good example. So you do enjoy the learning and the education part and getting people to understand and doing that part to help the conservation effort.
yeah,
Where Summer, she I think would be perfectly happy in Africa
yeah,
with
hmm
lions every day of her life.
yeah,
So
hmm
different paths, but both to the same end goal, you know.
yeah. This is what I say. I feel like the general public is stupid,
Yeah.
but my solution is to educate them.
Yes. Yes.
Like, yes, I think the general public is stupid, 100%. I'm sorry. I just think they're dumb. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not,
Well, wait. Let's reclassify. They're ignorant.
yeah, okay.
Ignorance can be cured through education.
Yes, there we go. Ignorant.
Stupidity can't. So I'm going to say that I'm going to assume what you mean is they're ignorant because you
Yes,
are hoping to educate. If
you're
you thought they were
ignorant.
really stupid, there'd be no point in trying to educate them.
Yeah, sorry. See, I'm an animal person, not an English person.
In
Okay.
immersion, right? Exactly.
I'm, I don't know what I'm doing.
Ignorance is perfectly fine. Ignorance is a natural part of life, and we are all ignorant forever. You never know everything. Ignorance is
Yeah.
fine. Ignorance can be, you can learn new things and you can, try new
hmm
things.
And
Once you're
hopefully y'all,
stupid is seeing the facts and
mm,
choosing to believe the opposite. And
yeah.
you can't teach someone out of that. Yeah.
And hopefully you all learned something today on this epic podcast episode. Look at
Right.
me there. I did the awesome ending. There, I can English. See, I can English, guys.
And Latin.
Yeah, I can Latin
Can you
a
say it
little
in
bit.
Latin?
No, no, I can't. Not that. I'm in school. I have to know certain parts of Latin to get a good grade on a test right now. And
Right.
after, so in a couple of weeks, I'm gonna have the final and be done with it. And then I'm gonna be able to focus on like actually enjoying Latin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the past year, 2 semesters have been, oh, I
You're
need to
learning the
know this specific
mechanics.
part of Latin to pass the test.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I don't want to touch it outside of that because A, it might mess me up. B, it makes me think of school. So that's another thing
That's
with the
that's why
past.
I say I'm better at reading. I can't speak it and I can understand it, but I can read it because when I see the words, I can pull the roots and I can put together and I can read the Latin. But to speak it, I can't fast enough in my head.
No, I can't do that either. It's the thing with, hey, okay, this is probably the end of the podcast. Goodbye,
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah.
We're
This
too
is us
rambling.
rambling now. This is what
And
we
then
do.
you're gonna have to cut it. Bye, everyone. Honest,
Bonus
yeah,
moment here. This is bonus. If you
yeah.
stick around, there'll be a cookie at the end of the program. No.
There's no cookie. Liar. All right, anyway, yeah. So, yeah, like, I can't instant recall things.
Yeah.
Like the teacher will ask me a question and he expects an answer immediately. I have to sit there for like 30 seconds to think of it.
Yeah, that's yeah. Yeah.
And apparently that's bad
Well,
for
that's
some
but I think
reason.
because your purpose in studying Latin is not to go out and sit at a cafe and speak with your Latin speaking friends. Your
Mhm.
your purpose is to better understand the industry that you're going into because so
Yeah, the
much of it is
scientific
in
names of
Latin.
creatures. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are insights if you can pull apart the terms and the
hmm
names and that
Yeah,
there are
like why
insights that
things
you
are
can
named
glean.
this way. Yeah.
Yeah, and that gives you some relation and starting point and basis. Yeah, so that's different than
hmm
wanting to go sit
Yeah.
in and have Latin over a latte, discuss Latin. Yeah. So, all right, cool. Well, that was cool. All right, I will get this put together and out, and
Can we chat for a little bit, just like normal?
it's like
Can we
normal
talk?
people. Yeah. Here, you want me to
Maybe
stop
talk to
recording?
you. Yeah, stop
Yeah,
recording.
stop recording. Okay, we're gonna go away now and discuss very
Bye.
top secret things.